Does anyone know why they need water? Why they are linked to water? Exactly. They don't sweat. So why is water so important? They lack sweat glands. Water is how they thermoregulate. And they accomplish that by wallowing, occupying shaded areas, and nocturnal feeding. That's another reason why it's such a hard time to control their population numbers. A lot of times, though, especially here in Texas in the summer, when it gets so hot that walking outside makes you feel like you just took a bath, they go nocturnal, and a lot of people don't want to get up at midnight, 1 a.m. to go out after them. And you can just see, if you look around the bank, you can see how they destroy that bank. And they just slowly get sediment and material off into the water. Same thing here again. Destroying the grass, destroying the banks, making everything dirty. And so that's when we get into water quality impairments. The loss of riparian areas. A big one that I always like to point out, because it's not often touched on, is the increase in runoff and sedimentation. So everyone talks about E. coli and the diseases and stuff that they can put into the water, but oftentimes we glass over the fact that all that wallowing they do destroys the native grasses that hold the banks together and allows for thousands and thousands of pounds of soil every year to get off into the water and go, and we lose it to the Gulf. And that makes it harder and harder for native grasses to come back. It makes it harder and harder for the rivers and streams to repair themselves. And again, that's just land that you lose. It's gone. Once it gets into the water, goes down the Gulf, we can't get it back. And then obviously, as I said before, the bacterial contamination, E. coli, other diseases they might have. Also, as I spoke to, they'll tear up the native grasses. And the way they tear it up, there are some invasive grasses and plants that actually thrive on that torn up and exposed ground and wet area, like Chinese tallow. And once it takes over, it's harder for that native grasses to come back. And I don't know if any of you have tried to treat or get rid of Chinese tallow. It's not a fun job, and it's not a one-time go-out easy job either. Wildlife impacts. So what would you rather have? Wild hogs or birds, geckos, even snakes, native animals out on your landscape? Wild pigs will go through and they'll eat ground nesting birds, they'll take down fawns, they'll take down amphibians, reptiles, just about anything they can get their hands on, they will destroy. They'll destroy habitat. And then they'll compete with native wildlife for resources. At the end of the day, everyone's property has a carrying capacity. If you have 10 acres or 100 acres, there's a carrying capacity to what your land can hold. How much habitat you have, how much water you have, how much natural food is abundant on your property. And now there's things we can do to increase or decrease that carrying capacity, but wild hogs take up a big chunk of that carrying capacity. So the more and more of them you have on your property, the less and less you can have the things you want, like whitetail, foxes. I know some people here probably don't enjoy them. I enjoy seeing bobcats out on the landscape. And then another big problem, especially here in Texas, where cattle operations are so important to so many landowners, is the wild pigs and livestock interaction. Has anyone ever seen this out on their property? I tell you, those wild pigs, they're some brave little guys. They'll go right up to cows, right up to horses. Wild pigs and disease concerns. Swine brucellosis. This is a big problem, especially for cattle producers and people who run cattle on their properties, because it can cause a false positive for bovine brucellosis. That's a horrible thing to happen, and it's not hard for it to happen either. Pseudorabies can cause neurological symptoms and death in livestock and pets. This is a big deal when you come to talk about dogs or cats you might have as pets, and children. If you have kids, grandkids running around your property where they can come into contact with wild hogs, the pseudorabies, while it's not normally deadly, it can cause some serious neurological symptoms that it'd just be horrible for, and is worse for little kids. And then tick-borne diseases. I don't know about any of you, but even in the last 2 cold spells we had, where I shot hogs, they still had ticks on them. And 3 out of 4 wild pigs in Texas are potentially infested with ticks capable of disease transmission. Has anyone here heard about the tick that can make you allergic to red meat? The Lone Star tick can bite you and make you allergic to red meat. Now, I don't know about any of you, but that'd be a bad day for me. So that's another reason why we want to get these animals off of our landscape and keep them from transmitting diseases to our livestock, our pets, our kids, and ourselves. Just a couple examples of interactions. You have one with the horse over there, and then you have them getting into a feed pen over here. All right, so before we get into laws, we're going to have a little pop quiz to see how much you guys already know. Do you need a hunting license to hunt wild pigs?
No.
You do not need a hunting license to hunt wild pigs, with the caveat of on private land.
With permission.
With permission, yes. If you're going to hunt public hunting land here in the state of Texas, you still need a hunting license. Now, another thing I always like to bring up with that is there anyone here who leases their land out to hunters? So, you are the king of your land. You can still require hunters to have a hunting license to hunt wild pigs. And I always like to bring that up because here at NRI we have a saying that you are the king and queen of your land. It's your rules. And for liability reasons, we normally suggest if you're going to lease it out, it's a fairly cheap license to go get. Can you move wild pigs across county lines? Yes, you can. As long as you're moving it to a controlled, to a approved holding facility, or boars to a approved hunting facility. With that in mind, you cannot take it across the county line to a neighbor you don't like. I know some of these counties around here might give you a hard time, but you can't be doing that. Can you release wild pigs once they're caught?
Boars have to be castrated.
Even then, it's only at an approved hunting facility. Yeah.
Facility, but then they still have to be castrated. Right?
Exactly. But generally, you cannot. So that's another thing. Once you decide to start trapping pigs, it's a commitment. You can't just trap a bunch of pigs and say, I don't feel like dealing with this today. Open the gate and let them go. And then are toxicants legal in Texas? No, they're not. So, straight from the Outdoor Annual, the hunting license went into effect in September of 2019. It applies to both resident and non-resident hunters. And as I said before, the licenses are still required on all public lands.